Hello, everybody, and welcome everyone to the session on DevOps Unleashed, optimizing your Apex lifecycle. Now, this is a topic that is often requested by our community, and we are glad to address it in today's session. To help you understand the Apex development lifecycle, we have Ed Jones with us today. For those of you who are not aware of Ed Jones, he is a consulting member of technical staff in the Apex product development team at Oracle. He has worked with many diverse platforms and technologies over the years. He enjoys giving back to the various development communities by answering users' questions, offering solutions to their issues, and sharing the knowledge he has gained. When he is not helping his lovely wife, three children, and three cats, he likes to work on personal coding projects, surf, mountain bike, and play guitar. Without further delay, I would like to hand it over to Ed Jones. Welcome, Ed, and over to you.
Hello there. Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. As Apurva said, this is a DevOps Unleashed, optimizing your Apex lifecycle. What we mean by that is your development, test, deployment to production is your lifecycle, and we're unleashing a bit of DevOps magic to make that easier instead of deploying applications manually and manually making changes to the database and that sort of thing. So yes, I am on the Apex product development team, and I do have those kind of hobbies, which I don't get time to do much. My other hobby here is me in the bush doing sort of bushcraft survival type stuff, trying not to get eaten by crocodiles and bitten by snakes when I'm not avoiding the wildlife. I've been on the Apex team, development team now for about 5 years. It doesn't seem like that long, it's just flown by. I've been a user of Apex for more than 10 years, since just before the page designer kind of time. So in the version 5 of Apex kind of timeline is when I started using Apex. I've been a developer for 40 plus years. I know I don't look old enough, but I am. um, and I've worked with all sorts of technologies, but I keep coming back to Apex because it just lets me get stuff done quicker and more efficiently, providing the framework to get the ideas out into the world quicker than any other technology I've worked with. You will find more of my stuff on the website that's on the screen there, tedbear.dev, because my mum calls me Teddy, and I have a collection of antique cuddly teddy bears, believe it or not. All right, enough waffle from me. This is a standard safe harbor thing. Obviously, don't base any purchasing decisions on what I say. This is just general product direction. We've all seen this before. So the majority of this presentation is taken from a wonderful white paper written by Steve Minch, formerly of the ADF team and formerly of the Forms team, who now works for us because all the best people come to the Apex team. So he wrote this wonderful technical paper, from which I've kind of summarized all that information. And also added in some little bits and pieces that aren't in the paper. Some things have changed with technology, as they always do. And we will be updating the white paper or the technical paper to include that. But this will just be kind of an overview of a lot of the concepts that are in this technical paper. I highly encourage you to go and read that paper. It has all sorts of interesting tips and tricks and like concrete examples of how to use DevOps to simplify your Apex lifecycle. To find it, you go to apex.oracle.com. If you don't know that website, then you should learn it because there is just a never-ending selection of resources on there that you want to make the most of. If you go to apex.oracle.com, go to the Learn menu in the top bar, additional resources off of there, scroll down, you'll find technical papers, and the one you're looking for is Understanding the Oracle Apex Application Development Lifecycle. So thank you for Steve for creating this, and apologies for me stealing all of his pictures and claiming this presentation as my own. And really most of it is Steve's work. I assume most of us, all of us, know Apex, and the really cool thing about it is that once you have the environment set up and you can get it in the cloud for free. All you need to do development is a browser. You log in, the browser is your development tool. You can do all your database stuff in the browser through the SQL Workshop. And it's all there. There's not like a whole like stack of technologies you have to install. If you're running the autonomous database version, you don't even have to bother upgrading it. That all happens magically for you. You just connect with the browser and you're good to go. That's very cool. Not the issue, but one of the things about that is that Apex is a metadata-driven platform. Or there's no kind of source code per se. It's all in the data dictionary tables inside of the database, and the application that you're running and the application that you're developing on is the current definition of those schema objects and of your Apex application. So it's what it is now. You change it, it's instantly there. There's no kind of if you're just running the application, there's no kind of deployment step. You just develop it, run it, and you're good to go. That's really cool because it's all immediate. There's no kind of compilation steps. There's no kind of deployment steps. You change it, it's instantly there. And that's really, really good for developing stuff quickly and kind of quickly prototyping over things and trying out ideas. And we've done that before, like collaboratively, even with Larry for the pandemic response stuff. Shakib was online with Larry, literally developing the pandemic response apps in front of Larry on the screen. Now, obviously, we went away and we polished them afterwards, but the kind of rapid prototyping that you can do is because it's all in the browser. It's all like current. What you're editing is what you see on the screen when you run it. And preserving the history of that, if you want to go back in time to old versions, you break stuff, you stuff up, as we all do. You've got to maintain that history somewhere else because the metadata that's in Apex is the current snapshot of what's happening. And we have big instances within Oracle that all Oracle developers use to develop applications, particular to their business, like little tracking apps or survey apps, things like that help them manage their own businesses. I don't think it's really an exaggeration to say that Oracle internally runs on Apex. There's so many little what do they call them, tactical apps that people build just to meet little specific use cases to their business. And when people want to build those within Oracle, they use Apex. Then what they do is they forget about the workspaces. It's happily running away. They forget to log into them, and then they time out, and we think they're idle, and so we purge them. Or they change some of their tables, and they forget what was there before, and they were like, "Oh, we made a mistake, and we want to revert it to what was there before." And you can't because the data dictionary holds like the point in time, and we can't revert back to an older state of the application. So people, because Apex is so easy to develop with, and because lots of things are done in Apex for you and make it super easy to do these things, these development tasks. People think that Apex should be responsible for everything. As our beloved, dearly departed friend Joel Kalman used to say, everything is an Apex problem. So because it makes it so easy to do the development and look after the database and things like that, people think that Apex should handle all the backups and all your CI/CD and all that sort of stuff for you. And unfortunately, it can't. There's so many different flavors of CI/CD that we're agnostic. We can plug into all those things, but we can't actually provide solutions for everybody that's going to work for everybody. So the Apex architecture, you probably know this as well, but I'll just run through it in the context of CI/CD and that sort of thing. So the Apex really consists of an Apex application really consists of two high-level concepts. There's the applications and all of their artifacts, pages and lists of values and templates and all that sort of stuff that live inside your workspace, and they all live on top of a database schema, which has, your tables and your views and your PL SQL packages, things like that inside them. And you'll have a workspace with applications in it and different schemas for each application. Or you might kind of group it together. You might have like a bunch of applications and they all use the same schema. We'll come back to why that is potentially a good idea a little bit later on. And when you build your applications like this, you can then have library applications where you have kind of shared lists of values, shared authentication schemes, and you can reference those into all your separate applications. So that you just change it in one place and all the applications can pick up those authentication schemes, for example. And taking authentication schemes as an example, that's really good because then all of your applications in your workspace can have that same authentication scheme. So it's like single sign-on between all of your applications. So people can surf between or navigate between these applications, and then they're not really aware that they're changing applications. If you use the Apex Builder, as I'm sure many or most of you do, that is what you're doing. Literally, the Apex Builder consists of a bunch of different applications, but because they're all share the same authentication scheme, you navigate between them without even having to think about it. Excuse me. So, this is great. It's all in the database. It's all fine. It's all immediate. But for maintaining a history of your application and for being able to revert it back to a point in time, you are going to want to save it somewhere, persist it somewhere. And so you're going to want to take it out of the database and put it into a file system somewhere. So for a workspace, you can export your applications. I'm sure most of you have done that. You take your application, you click export, it gives you a zip file or a SQL file. The zip file just contains like a bunch of SQL files and they're all kind of mushed together, and you can use that to deploy to different environments. For your database, you want another way to take those definitions of your database objects and put them into your file system. Now you can do that from Apex. You can use the supporting objects and you can export the schema. That's fine. That works well. Lots of our gallery apps, our starter apps work exactly like that. And you can do that, and that's cool. But if you want to do it in, I want to say like a more professional way, not that the way to do it with supporting objects is not professional, but if you want to maintain like a history of your database changes over time and be able to roll it back to certain points in time, and you don't want to have to manually maintain a bunch of SQL scripts to create tables and things like that, there is another way to do that, and we'll get to that later on. So although Apex is browser-based and all of its metadata and the underlying schema lives in the database, to make use of CI or continuous delivery, continuous integration, automatic deployment, things like that, you're going to want to come up with a file-based paradigm. And that is so that you can store these artifacts in source control. You can maintain a history of them. You can roll back changes that break things. And you can merge changes, and then you can deploy it to remote sites, that sort of thing. So you've got to somehow take Apex out of the database, get it into the file system. And that's what we're coming to. But before you do that, you are going to want to track your bugs, plan your features, set milestones, things like that. This might seem like overkill for small projects, but there's a saying, apologies if I get this wrong, but there's a saying in the military which goes something like, train how you fight. And what that means is when you're doing little play projects, training for stuff in the military, running around with fake ammunition, things like that. It all seems like fun, and you can just mess around, and it's and you don't really have to take things seriously in software development. If you're just doing like a little project for yourself or with a couple of your friends, you don't have to track these things in a bug tracker, and you don't have to plan milestones and things like that. But I would suggest that you should, because if you start off with that mindset, it becomes kind of ingrained, and then that becomes the way that you want to work. It helps you organize your thoughts. Even if there's just two or three of you on the project, it helps you kind of collaborate between each other. And when a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the track, when you come to look at the application, you go, oh, why is this done like this? You'll be able to look back at your bug tracker or your milestone planning and work out why those decisions were made. And maybe I'm sad, maybe I'm a nerd, maybe I'm doing this for too long, but I do this just for my own personal projects. Maybe it's because I'm forgetful, and I forget stuff that I need to do. So I'll put it into bug trackers. So some common ones would be if you just want to stay inside of Apex, that's cool. We provide team development. I don't want to say it's simple, but compared to some of these other options, it really is. But if you just want to stay inside the Apex platform, you do all your development in there. It's all in a browser. So is team development. It's perfectly valid. And I've built projects tracking all the features and all the planning within Apex team development. It's fine. It's great. Oracle also provide Visual Builder Studio. Although it says it's Visual Builder Studio, you have to use it just for Visual Builder. You can track whatever projects you like in there. This is showing the Kanban board where you kind of move stuff between swim lanes as things get worked on and planned. If, as we'll see a bit later, Git is like the de facto standard version control system, source control system at the moment. If you're storing your code on GitHub, again, if you like with the team development, if you want to keep stuff like a limited number of platforms, if you're storing your code in Git, you might want to, or in GitHub, you might want to use GitHub issues because then your code is next to your issues and you can kind of tie them together and assign issues to like releases and then they get auto closed and things like that. So that's pretty cool if you want to do that. Again, if Git is the de facto standard source control system, then Jira is probably the de facto project management tool or ticket management tool, whatever you want to call it. It gets a lot of bad press, especially internally at Oracle, because we have gigantic instances that can get confusing at times. But if you have a nicely organized, nicely maintained, nicely managed instance of Jira and it's correctly set up, it really is quite good. And there's so many different plugins and third-party tools that integrate with Jira. It can be really nice and productive. And we built integrations, by the way, between Apex and Jira to add custom reporting on it and custom kind of sync backwards and forwards. But I digress. There used to be, if you want an Apex-based solution, there used to be a packaged application called ptrack for Project Tracker. That is now deprecated, unfortunately. I wouldn't really recommend it, but if you really want to install it, there are ways to make that happen. In researching this presentation, I actually found someone who has a copy of ptrack on GitHub that you can download and install yourself. I don't know if he keeps it up to date. I don't know if that's against Oracle's licensing terms, but just do with that information what you will. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend using ptrack. There are better solutions out there. One of them being the new Strategic Planner app. This is an Apex app. It's a starter app. You can install it from the gallery. It's what we literally use internally on the Apex team to manage our Apex releases and all the projects and activities, initiatives, all that sort of stuff for the Apex release. And this is the integration I was talking about. We have some syncs between Strategic Planner and Jira so that we can kind of talk to external teams and they can be aware of what we're doing. But I seriously suggest you check that out. It's very cool. It was initially written by Mike Hichwa, who is obviously one of the creators, inventors of Apex, along with Joel. So, it's if Mike's written it, it's going to be good and it's going to be very Apexy, which is also cool. Okay, so that's tracking your bugs. So you know what you're going to do. Now, once you've done that and you've got your developers, you're going to want to start developing. And if you have more than one user in your development environment and you're using a single shared development environment of Apex, you will hit errors like this when people are working on the same bit of functionality and they tread on each other's toes. They're changing the same page and sometimes the same regions on the same page at the same time. People's changes get overwritten. People can't save their changes because somebody else has changed it while they've been editing stuff. It's awkward. Um, One way that you can kind of mitigate that is by planning your work, hence the tool on the previous slide, planning your work aligned along functionality boundaries so that the same people aren't working. You know what people are working on, and you make sure that the same people aren't working on the same areas of your application at a time. And that's good for planning, but people still make mistakes. So, and they might change, they might not realize that they're changing something that's impacting another developer's work. So we have this lock functionality where a developer can go in, they can start work on something, they can lock the page, which means that they can change it. But if other people inadvertently or not try to change it, they won't be able to because it'll be locked. That's kind of like a sledgehammer way to do it. A more elegant, oh, and kind of helping with that is breaking up your kind of big monolithic application into lots of little applications with little areas of functionality so that then you can assign developers when you're doing your planning to different areas of your overall application, and they map to mini applications within your workspace, which reduces the chance of collisions with the development stuff. So an even more, sorry about that. So an even more elegant solution to that is a relatively new feature of Apex using application working copies. There is a lovely blog post by Chaitanya which talks about this, and this introduces kind of a Git-like branching functionality into Apex. So you can take a working copy of an application. Multiple developers can do that in the same workspace. They can all create their own working copies of the application. Then they can work on them separately. Then they can merge them back to like the main copy of the application. And Apex will tell you what conflicts you have and help you to merge them together. So that's a really cool piece of functionality that you can use. Again, I suggest you check out this blog post. The link's at the bottom, but if you just search for something like working copies, Oracle Apex, Google will bring up that blog post. It's very cool indeed. Having said all that, this is in Steve's white technical paper. He kind of covers this in a bit more detail, but this is the team-centric development model where the kind of whole team is together, all developing together in this one single multi-user development environment. Instead, what I would suggest is that you use the feature development model. In this model, all the developers or very small teams of developers, maximum 2 or 3 people, so that they can collaborate really closely together. They all have their separate development environments. They'll use Git to maintain the source code so they can always install the latest version or a particular version of your application and your whole environment on their on their personal development instance. They can make changes, they can pull back in changes that other people have made to main and then retest their application to make sure it hasn't broken anything, and no one's going to step on anyone's toes because everyone's separate. But you've still got this kind of one main branch running through the middle, which is like the source of truth of your application code. Why I recommend this is that's because we used to build the model that we use to build Apex itself. All of our developers have their own personal development branches, sometimes many branches when they're working on different features kind of in parallel. And we're syncing from main and reinstalling it and retesting it. And then once it's all working and tested, it'll get merged back into main following code reviews and things like that. And then that will all, we have CI/CD pipelines, which then take the main branch periodically and push it into a shared Apex development instance where we can kind of do integration tests, if you like, to make sure, although, you know, we do tests along the way and we do code reviews and things like that, we always want to ensure that when everything's all squished together, merged together, it's installed on the central Apex development instance where it can be tested. To make sure it all works as a cohesive whole. And as well as your Apex development instance, and this is really getting into kind of the meat of what we're talking about, you want to make it easy to take your code line at whatever point it is and put it into a new instance. Regularly, that's going to be like a development instance where you can, test that stuff is still ticking along and try out the new features. Sometimes we give access to our development instance to our very best friends so they can try out new features of Apex before they're even ready, just to make sure it meets their needs, that sort of thing. But if you can do that, if you can regularly push to your development instance, then you're going to have the tools in your pipeline to push to test instances and eventually to your production instances. Now you can have your development instance, test instance, and prod and other instances as well in the same physical Apex instance. You just have them in different workspaces. I wouldn't really recommend that, just because it makes it easier if they're separate instances to do things like have the same workspace ID, and not have other IDs. And things change as you're deploying between different workspaces and different environments. It just makes things easier. But you can, by all means, you can do that if you're pushed for space or you're pushed for computing resources. But these days, Apex is so easy to spin up many instances of it. You can get a free Apex workspace. Go to apex.oracle.com, and you can sign up for a free workspace. You can sign up for many free workspaces. I'm sure people do. If people start abusing it, we do notice, and we will tell you to stop doing that. And I cannot stress this strongly enough. Do not use your free evaluation workspace to host your production application. People do. Then they get hit by like big spikes in traffic because, I don't know, they're running a conference or something like that, and everyone's logging in because that's where they built their registration app. I mean, that's cool that people can do that, but the platform itself is not built for that. It's just an evaluation instance. We kind of patch it at odd times. It can go down at funny times when we change configurations. We try and keep it up as much as possible, obviously, but there's no service level agreement on that. So use it for evaluation by all means, but please don't put production applications on there. It upsets us and it will upset you in the end. Another thing is that you don't have direct access to the database on there, which means some of this stuff that I'm going to talk about, that I'm going to demo in a little while, is not going to work there because you can't access the database directly. Instead, as the big recommended sticker on there says, Apex on Oracle Cloud is great. You can get a free instance on there. You can get many free instances. They work just great. They're absolutely fantastic. I cannot quite believe that Oracle provide these things for free, but they do, and it's really cool. And even if you can start off on always free, and you can migrate it to a paid instance. Again, don't quote me on this, but I believe that the lowest cost of an Apex instance on here is something like $200 a month. And again, for the amount of stuff that you get with that, other accompanying stuff, not just a database and Apex, but for $200 a month, that's crazy good value. And I mean, for a regular person, that you might not want to spend that, but in an IT department, that $200 a month is nothing. It's a rounding error. So that's super cool. And then you can scale it up to huge environments, millions of dollars a month if you've got deep pockets. If you're old-fashioned like me, you can of course install Apex on premises. You might not be old-fashioned. You might just have really strict security requirements, and you want to keep it within your premises. That's fine. You can do that too. You can download it. You can install the database, and you can install Apex on top of that, and you can install Ords on top of that. Okay, cool. So if you're a little bit more modern than that, and you still want to install it on premise, but you don't want to go through all the hassle of installing Ords and configuring your web servers and all that sort of stuff, you can get a VirtualBox appliance, which has Oracle Linux, the database, REST data services, so also known as Ords, SQL CL, which we'll come to in a second. Some of you will have seen that as I accidentally scroll through my slides. And it'll have Apex in there and the recent version of the JDK. That's really cool if you have a system on which VirtualBox can run. Unfortunately, on the newest Macs, the Apple Silicon Macs, VirtualBox won't run very well. You can get it to run, but it's using emulation rather than virtualization, so it's not super fast. But on Linux and on Windows, VirtualBox works absolutely great. You download the appliance, you install it, you've got your Apex development environment ready to go. And if you're like a Windows-based shop, that is great for setting up your developers. You just say, here is VirtualBox, install it, and they're good to go. They're ready to start developing on Apex. If you're even more modern than that, and or if you run a Mac like I do, there you can use a Docker or Podman image of 23 AI free, and that is native on ARM64, which is the Apple Silicon. You will want to install the full version. The light version is missing some features that Apex needs, but that's really cool. That is what I'm running on my Mac at the moment. And I promise you I am getting to a demo. That is what I'm using for some of these demo components. Kind of the downside to that is that you have to install this just the database. So you'll have to install Apex yourself. You'll have to run Ord yourself. It's not super complicated, but it does take a bit of time to get that set up. On the other hand, if you are not on a new Mac, if you're on Windows or Linux or an Intel Mac, you can download this slightly different Docker image, which is kind of like the Autonomous Database Cloud instance in a little box that you can install and carry around with you. It's got Ords already configured. It's got Apex. It's got Database Actions, formerly known as SQL Developer Web. And it's got some other stuff. I don't know what that is, but it's got Apex and it's got Ords, so that's ready to go. You can find these all on apexoracle.com. There's links to all these registries from there. So that's cool. So this is how and why and how easy it is to set up like a bunch of different Apex instances that all your developers can use without treading on each other's toes. So once you've got all this, all these developers are happily beavering away in these separate environments. How do you all collaborate on this? Well, you will want to save your work. Again, I can't stress highly enough how often you need to save your work. Slight digression. When I was at college many, many years ago, I'd been working on a project for weeks. And then my PC crashed and I lost it all. I had no backups, no source control. This was this is aging me, but this is pre-internet days, so there was no cloud. I'd lost it all. I didn't know what to do. The very next day, I went out and I bought a tape backup machine. Again, that's aging me, but a little box that I could plug a tape into my PC and back it up every day. And then I had to redo the project from scratch. And guess what? Never happened again. Never lost my project again. But backups are like insurance. They're no fun at all until you need them. And when you need them, you really, really appreciate them. So as this famous image says, in case of fire, git commit, git push, then you can leave the building. And the second one is, this is a joke, right? But it's not really. Git commit is great, and you should want to do that very, very often because it's saving a history of your kind of local changes, but only locally. Git push is the important one because that sends all of your changes up into the cloud, hopefully to an environment that's professionally managed and professionally backed up. So that's the important one because in the case of fire, hopefully it never happens to you, but in the case of a fire, you don't want the source code that's sitting on your laptop getting burned. That wants to be up in the cloud somewhere where they have offsite backups and all that cool stuff. So you've got your source code, it's all safe, it's all up on someone else's server. Now you can run away and not get burned. So how do we do that? I've said before that the Apex development environment, all its metadata or your underlying schema is in the database. We need to get it out of the database. In the olden days, we could do that with SQL Plus. The successor to SQL Plus is SQL CL. If you haven't checked it out already, please do. As I say, I've been doing this for a very long time. I was with SQL Plus from the very, very early days. It's kind of ingrained in my muscle memory. It's taken me a while, but SQL CL is so much better than SQL Plus. It's what I use every day. So you can download it. Again, the link is there, but if you Google for Oracle SQL CL download, it will be there. You don't even have to download. You can download it. I'm not quite sure how to install it on Windows. I assume you have to download it. But for Mac, uh, excuse me, you can get it through Homebrew. And on Oracle Linux, you can just use whatever package manager you use to install it. It does require Java. It says on that slide, because this is what I pulled from the SQL CL website, that it needs Java 11, 17, or 21. I believe, and I'm sure the SQL CL people will shout at me if I get this wrong. I believe the latest version needs 17 or later, 17 or 21. 11 will no longer work. But anyway, you can install it and you can try and run it. If it doesn't run, it'll tell you what it needs, and it'll tell you exactly what you need to install to get it to run. By the way, I would highly recommend Oracle's Graal VM for Java. It's super, super fast. It's very cool. That's not on here anyway. That's just a free tip for you. But why do we need SQL Plus? As I say, in the olden days, so you can of course export your Apex apps from the Apex builder itself. That's fine. Everybody does that. If you want to automate all this kind of stuff, which you really do, believe me, you want to get it out of the database. There used to be a utility, in fact, a Java class called Apex Export. That's now deprecated. It's probably still there lying around, but it's no longer updated because all of that functionality is now in SQL CL. I don't want to say it's exactly the same code, but under the covers, it probably is. And what that does is calls into Apex's own engine to do the export, and then SQL CL just kind of marshals that for you and saves it to disk for you. So that's why you use SQL CL to get one of our high-level components out of the database, that being the Apex application and all of its components. The other reason is that built into SQL CL is supports for Liquibase. Liquibase is an open source tool that manages changes in your database. Like I said before, you can use supporting objects to manage changes in your database, but they're then kind of tied to particular applications. And if you've got lots of applications, it's like, which one owns the objects? Where do I put my supporting objects? How do I roll my database back if I break things? Liquibase handles all of that sort of thing for you, and it's built into SQL CL. So SQL CL is really cool in that it can take your Apex application out of the database. It can take your database schema definitions, tables, packages, views, all that sort of stuff out of the database and kind of persist it to disk. And even better, it can then push all that back in. That's not a surprise, but sometimes these tools can't do both. Of course, SQL CL can. And of course, like SQL Plus before it, it can be scripted. So you can script and automate all of this. So very cool. So with that, I'm going to demo some of this. So hopefully I'll still keep talking. Don't you worry about that. But I will show you some stuff that's actually happening. And hopefully, unlike me keeping scrolling through my slides by my mouse wheel, hopefully the demo gremlins are not going to bite us when I try and demonstrate this sort of stuff. Okay. So let me get rid of this presentation. This I'll come to a little bit later. First of all, okay, let me log into so this is my local development environment. As you can see from the URL bar, it is indeed running on my local machine in the context of, hopefully you can all still see that, in the context of the feature-centric development model. I'm a developer of Apex. This is my development machine that nobody else really has access to. This is where I do all my development. And you can see in this environment, once I've signed in here, I've put it, so this is something Steve suggests, and I use this feature all the time. It's a relatively new feature of Apex. You can put a little banner down the side or across the top, which tells you which environment you're in. So I can see this is my development environment. You set that under here, manage service and environment banner. It's just a real quick way of helping you to not make changes in the wrong environment. Of course, you should never be logging into production or even test to make these changes, but we all do. Something critical happens and you've got to fix it right now. So you log into production. It's a good way to get your heart rate up. I really wouldn't recommend it, but if you do that, set your environment banner and it will at least give you a little clue that you're in the wrong place and you shouldn't be changing it here. Of course, your production environment should just be runtime only. You shouldn't be able to log into the builder, or your deployments should just happen um, via your scripting and your deployment pipelines. So this is my development environment, right? In here, I've just got the customers application. I just picked one of our sample applications to install for the purposes of demo. And in SQL Workshop, I can see I've got all the tables and all the packages that this application installs. Very cool. And of course, I can run that if I log in. And you can see, if you're familiar with this app, you can see that I've been kind of messing around with it a bit while I've been practicing these sort of things. And I've made the little banner thing here a little bit more friendlier. Isn't that cool? Isn't that nice? What I've also done is, actually, no, let me log into the production environment first. So this is the development environment. This is the development customers application running with my little customization in there. If I now go to my quote unquote production environment, this would probably be up in the cloud somewhere. In fact, in this environment, it even is in the cloud. This is on a virtual machine that I actually use for my Apex development. Don't worry, it's inside the firewall. You can't get at it. Now I've picked the same workspace name and actually the same credentials to get into it, but of course you don't have to. And as I said, I've put the little red banner down the side that says this is production. I shouldn't even be able to get into the builder in production, but for the purposes of this demo, I've enabled it just so that I can show that the changes are getting applied. Again, this has the customers application installed. This was actually installed by scripts, and you can see that it is up to date with the development instance, and you can tell that because it's got this little hello extra bit of customization in there. So let's make some changes and let's put it into source control and let's show what I've been talking about for the past 43 minutes actually in action. So I want to remove this stupid customization thing that I've got here. So I'm going to go back to my development environment. You can also do things like put kind of banners and stuff across your application so you know which version you're looking at. At the moment, I'm just looking at it based on the URL. So I know this is my development version of customers. So let me edit this banner up here. Quick edit, go into there. And it's the application title that's getting printed. This is, an old application, so it's using this legacy region. We really should update it to use a new dynamic content, but I'm not going to do that now. All I'm going to do now is look at the code. You can see here is the change that I made. I put a hello on the front. That's kind of cheesy. I don't want to do that. But as well, I want to change it because what it'll do is it'll use this kind of default header if I haven't defined the preference correctly. I don't want to do that. I want the user or the developer or project management or something to actually define those preferences. So I'm going to change that, get rid of all that, save that. And we're going to make some changes to the backend PL SQL as well. Remember this package. We're going to change it in a minute when it's getting this preference value. So this is not going to be kind of an earth-shattering change, but we're going to see what happens when we run the page from that. Now there's a new version, and it's got this message that says preference does not exist. What preference does not exist? I don't know. So I need to fix that. So I'm going to change, and all these are just kind of example changes. This is just to show that stuff's getting changed, and my production instance obviously hasn't changed because I've not deployed it. So I want to change this so that when these error messages appear, I can see which preference I need to define. So I'm going to go to Visual Studio Code. Again, if Git is the de facto standard version control and Jira's de facto standard project management, VS Code these days is the de facto standard editor. And that is because even though it's from Microsoft, it is awesome. And when you install VS Code, you will definitely want to install the Oracle SQL Developer extension for VS Code. That is fabulous. It's kind of where we've migrated from the old SQL Developer to the VS Code version of it. There is an older version, which is the Oracle Developer Tools. You'll see that that is deprecated. Don't use that. Use the developer extension for VS Code. So once you're in there, what I want to do is edit my code in my development environment live. To do that, you're going to want to go to your connections. These are all my different connections that I use for my work. The one I'm looking at is this local Apex demo. I'll just edit it so you can see what's there. The username, and this is the schema username and password, not the Apex workspace username and password, and the details to connect to it. So let me do that right now. I'll connect to it. And then you can see there's a tiny little green like plug icon by there to say it's connected. So I want to change that package, right? The one that we remembered, the EBA cust FW, so that we can customize the message that gets output when the preference doesn't exist in that header thing. And I want get preference value is what I want. So that's in the header, but I want it in the body. And when I call out the body, I've picked on the wrong thing. FW body is what I wanted. When I pick up the body, I still want the get preference value. And this is super clear. I don't know if you can see this with all these little windows here, but this is super cool, is it shows you the body, but it also gives you the links to the procedures inside of it. So I can go straight to that get preference value. And here is where it says preference does not exist. So I'm just going to really quickly change this. So it tells me what preference doesn't exist. And then what is it? It's P preference name. So now when I save this, because I'm working directly in the database, I save it and it's just going to compile it against the database, and I'll see that change straight away in my development version of the application. This is all cool. So far we're doing kind of standard Apex development, albeit using SQL Developer or VS Code, the SQL Developer extension for VS Code. Now, as we said right at the top of this, we want to persist that to the file system. So here is my terminal. What I've actually, all right, let me just do this first. So in here is the source code repository I've already set up for my application. So I want to get the Apex application and the database definitions out of the database onto my file system. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start up SQL CL, but I'm not going to log in, and you'll see why in a second. That's because you can obviously provide the connection information on the command line, but that kind of leaks passwords and things like that. Built into I can't type and speak at the same time. Built in to SQL CL is a connection manager. So you can define your connections within SQL CL, and then the credentials and all the connection information is kind of hidden away. And what's really cool is that the SQL Developer extension for VS Code and SQL CL are very closely tied together. So you'll see, if you're eagle-eyed, that the connections in here are the same as the connections that I have in VS Code. So you define them in VS Code with this nice GUI, and you can then connect to them in SQL CL. Now, because I've got spaces in my name, in my connection names, I need to put quotes around it. But that's cool. That's now connected. Now, to export my Apex application, all I need to do, and apologies, I'm going to copy this from another window because it's quite long to type out, and you don't want to see my terrible typing and all my spelling mistakes. So you call SQL CL with the kind of Apex module. You're going to tell it you want to export an application with ID 101. You want to split it up into all separate SQL files. You don't just want like one monolithic SQL file. It makes it easier to source control it and find differences between things. These two options here is that you don't want all of your source control directories and changes to get triggered because just because the date's changed and just because some IDs have changed. Most of the time for traditional Apex development, you will want to export the supporting objects because that's what creates things in the database. However, in this case, we're going to use Liquibase to do that. So we don't want the supporting objects. We only want it in application source. You can also do the YAML real format if you want. That can make it easier sometimes to do code reviews and to do diffing between different versions of your application. Steve goes into that in more detail in the technical paper. And a new option, which isn't actually in that technical paper, which I think we need to add, is this overwrite files switch. By default, SQL will just make copies so it doesn't overwrite stuff, but then that doesn't kind of work very well with source control. So you want that. So I'm going to hit return now. It's going to export from my workspace, application 101, customers. It's installed it. That's all there is to it. If I exit out of SQL now and do git status to see what's changed, I can see that my application create overall script has changed and page 59 has changed, which is what I would expect. That's cool. That's the application. It's as easy as that. Obviously, you can script all this. We, for our development environments in Apex, have all this wrapped up in nice helper scripts and make commands that do all this for our developers. But you also want the database changes, right? So if I change into my database directory, and you can see all the things that Liquibase has created. There's an overall controller which tells it what to install. There's package bodies, there's package specs, there's tables views, all that sort of stuff. So that's cool. So we're going to log into SQL. You don't have to connect. You don't have to log in first and then connect. You can just log in and use the same name as we used before from the connection manager, if you know what it is. So that's going to put us straight into the database, the command line. Again, I'm going to use the command that is in a different window that I can just copy and paste to hopefully keep the gremlins at bay. So LB is Liquibase, generate schema, tells me to get the current schema. There's all sorts of options to Liquibase to get information from different schemas, to filter the objects that you pull out, all sorts of things are in there. It's very cool. Too much to go over now in my remaining 7 minutes. Again, you want it to split it up into all these different directories to make it easy to source control and merge between the versions. And again, you want to overwrite the files that are already there because we're going to keep a track of them in our source code repository. We don't want it to do it itself, which is kind of what it does if you don't overwrite the files. So again, this is going to take a couple of minutes. It shouldn't be that slow because it kind of looks at the data dictionary and it works out what things have changed and what hasn't. So it's not like if I run that, it's going to try and export my whole schema every time. It's just looking at the changes. And what Liquibase does is has this concept of change sets, and it keeps track of all the changes in your database over time. So if you have a database that's way out of date, it'll apply lots of changes in sequence, all the change sets to bring it up to the current state of the database, tables with different columns and all that sort of thing. So that didn't take very long at all. That's pretty cool. And that's saved all that information into these files in my local machine. One other cool thing that SQL Plus actually had as well is that if you prefix commands with an exclamation mark or a bang, it'll just run operating system commands. Not a big deal, but very handy when you're generating files and you want to see what's changed. And you can interact with Git just from within SQL CL by using that kind of bang command. So we can see now that what's changed is the package body, which I just changed, the application and the page in that application. Actually, just to show that it works, I'm going to add all those to my list of things that I want to commit. And then I'm going to do git, whoops. Uh, Something like that. Told you my typing was terrible. And now if I do git status again, and why it's handy to be able to do this from within SQL is if I hadn't added the right um, if I was filtering my Liquibase objects and I hadn't added the right things, then I can check what Git thinks it's going to commit and go back and export different things without having to bounce in and out of SQL CL. So that's pretty cool. So now I can see nothing's there. It's all committed. But as I said in my kind of fire safety slide, this is just committed locally. So this is my local working tree. It's not in the cloud yet. If my laptop catches fire, I'm going to lose it all. So what I also want to do is git push to push it up to my remote repository. And why that's important. So I can show you the repository. So this is in GitLab, if I can find it, in my page of links. I can't find it. So this is pushing it up to an instance of GitLab, which is a GitHub-like instance that we have inside of a Oracle. Why don't I pull it up? Aura Hub. So this is me. And this is what we use. This is where we store, not in this repository, obviously, but this is where we store Apex source code. I'm going to run out of time, but I'll try and rush through this last little bit. So we'll see once I've logged into here. It doesn't want to do it. Okay, let's not do that. So that's pushed it up to my remote repository. So it's all saved. Now I can sign into my development environment. This is my development environment, believe it or not. I'm going to SSH into that development machine. I'm going to change into the directory where the code was. I can see that this was up to date with the latest code. But what I want to do is pull down the code that I've just committed and apply that to this database. You wouldn't do this generally. You wouldn't log into the box. You would have like a process, a regular process that would do this for you. But I'm just showing kind of manually what that process would do. So I've pulled down these things. I can see that the right things have changed. The application's changed. The page has changed. In here, I have some little, let me move this out of the way. In here, I have some little scripts that help me with installing the application and installing the Liquibase changes. If I look at those, only because there's some commands that you have to run when you're importing applications to make it a bit easier. So we're setting the workspace, the ID, we're telling it to install the supporting objects, even though we didn't export them. For the first install, you might want it, and then we install the application. So I can just run that application install command. And again, I have to, because I have a weird development environment, I just have to unset this alias. Don't worry about that. You won't have to do that. That's just particular to my development environment. Again, I've set up all the connections with the connection manager ahead of time. So I can literally just run SQL CL, give it the connection name, and tell it to install the app. And it's going to go away, and it's going to do that. And then the reason you want to install the application first is that if you have the supporting objects turned on, the application is going to create them. But if you haven't brought those up to date with your schema, if you haven't manually edited your SQL files, you're going to get the wrong versions of the tables and the packages in your schema. So you import the application first, then you import the database objects with Liquibase. Again, we have a similar script to do the Liquibase updates. We're setting some options that affect how Liquibase updates things, especially if it's in different schemas, and then it just runs those change logs. So as I say, if you run this with a bunch of changes, it can take a while because it's looking at all of your database objects that you want to import. It's seeing what's changed, and it's only applying the changes it thinks it needs to. Now, in this case, it's been pretty quick because the database demo gremlins have bitten us, and it's not actually applied the change to that package, but it should have done. Now, I think this has happened to me a couple of times in preparing for this demo, and I think it's because of the time difference. The database is in UTC, and my local machine is in Australian time. I couldn't work out how to fix that. If I leave it for 24 hours, it will realize that the versions of the changes in Liquibase are older than what's in my database, so it will apply them. But in this case, I can see that it hasn't actually changed any change sets. So this is a gremlin who has bitten us, but I think I know the reason for it. Be that as it may, the new version of the application is now installed, but because the package didn't get installed properly, when I refresh that and log in again, it's now just going to have like the old version. Preference does not exist. It doesn't have our changes in there. So if I had more time, I would figure out why I was doing that. But you get the idea, right? You make the changes in your development environment. You export them to your file system. You commit it to source control. You go into your production environment and you run those changes with SQL CL against your database, and it updates them. I know I'm over time, but if I can just flip back to the presentation real quick. All of that stuff that I've gone through, Steve has much fancier scripts in the technical paper to do all this sort of stuff. I have really simple scripts in here that do the importing of applications. But even those fancy scripts that Steve has in his technical paper have kind of been superseded by SQL CL projects. This, as it says there, contains subcommands like the Apex subcommand, like the LB Liquibase subcommands. It has subcommands to manage your projects, and essentially it does everything that I've just done, but through the command line of SQL CL. I appreciate that this is quite small and I'm over time, but it'll do things like it'll scaffold the project for you. It'll set up the source control directories ready for you. You create your tables as normal, and then you just run project export, and it does essentially what we just did to do the Liquibase exports, and it'll also do the Apex apps. And then it'll make those changes in your source code repository. You can save those changes. You can create a deployment artifact in a zip file, and then you can just run project deploy in SQL CL, and it will send it to a machine of your choice and install it. So with that, as I say, please go to the technical paper, read through it in detail. It's got much more information than what I've just rushed through here, especially around unit testing and UI testing with Cypress. That's super useful. It's also got example scripts for Jenkins to do automated CI/CD. With that, thank you. Thank you for staying with me over time. For those of you that did,
Thank you so much, Ed, for such an interesting session on DevOps Unleashed. I'm very much sure that it must have added value to all the attendees. And also thank you to all the panel members for answering the questions. Still, we have few questions, and Ed, I would like you to just answer it for us. I'll just read it out. So there's one question. It's asking, do you use project feature for the SQL CL?
that is indeed what I can see you asked this just recently, but this is what I just touched on in that kind of second to last slide is that yes, the project feature is there. It's kind of cool. In fact, it's very cool because it kind of eliminates a lot of the custom scripting that we've had to do and that Steve's got there. I'm going to add it to Steve's to-do list, or maybe to my to-do list, to add information about the SQL CL project feature into that technical paper because it is very good and it helps you do even more stuff directly in SQL CL. So yeah, it's essentially doing what we've just done kind of manually, but more automatically.
All right. One last question. Is there any way to run all these scripts in the UI itself instead of a command line?
Those exact scripts, no, because it's kind of built into SQL CL. So that there are APIs to do Apex application exports and imports in the UI or from PL SQL. You can do that. And in fact, in the olden days, I and other people have created kind of REST services where you can make like a curl command, a curl request to an endpoint, and it will give you back an export of application. And then the opposite, where you kind of post a zip file back to this endpoint and it'll install it for you. And the remote deployment feature of Apex will kind of do that as well to some extent. That's for the Apex applications. For the database changes, it's a little bit more complicated. You'll end up having to write SQL scripts to kind of make those changes for you, whereas update an initial create table statement, and then for subsequent updates, you'll have to alter tables, alter sequences, and that sort of thing. So it's complicated. And Liquibase, if it doesn't break like it just did in my demo, will handle all that for you. So kind of, but not really. But all this is about kind of automating these processes, so you're not having to sign into the UI itself to do these things. You shouldn't be signing into the UI to deploy to production, and you should be deploying to your test environments in the same way that you will deploy to production, so that you can test that those deployments work. I hope that makes sense.
All right. Thank you so much, Ed. Now, as we move toward the end of this session, I have some few announcements and key takeaways for our attendees today. So we are coming up with a very grand event, that is JPEG Apex Low-Code Summit, and it's happening in Bengaluru, and it's coming on November 8, 2025. So this Low-Code Summit is a gateway for all of us for learning, for networking, and understanding new features, what's coming up in Oracle Apex. So stay tuned and follow our social media channels for more updates. And now, if you are new to Oracle Apex, or you're already a seasoned developer but want to brush up few skills, you can go to our learning path here, where you can just scan the QR and you will just redirect it to the learning path. And you can also follow this blog at blogs.oracle.com/apex-post. Become an Oracle Apex Pro. You will get all the details about the learning path. So in this learning path, we have two trainings. One is Oracle Apex Developer Professional. There you will learn the basics, from basics to advanced, for all the Apex components and all the topics. And also we have added new modules here on building mobile friendly Apex application, and also business processes, automating business processes using the workflows. And now the second training is about Oracle Apex empowering low code apps with AI. In this training, you will learn all the AI features that we are offering, and also you can understand how to integrate Apex with AI. And also it will give you an insight how to integrate with Apex with your Oracle OCI AI services, and also other native services as well. And now, what else? Once you are done with these courses, the next step is to get certified. You have to enroll for the certification. You can just go to this link, complete this training, and then come for the certification. And what you will get after doing this certification? The very first thing is that you will add a feather in your cap. You can just showcase your skills to the entire community that you are Oracle Apex certified or a cloud developer professional. And also by doing this certification, you are not just skilled, but you are the future ready. And once you are done with certification, once you have passed the examination, you can just post it over the social media and use these tags, hashtag Oracle, hashtag low code, and all these hashtags, so that it can reach to the wider audience of the community, so that you can get visibility over there as well. And now, if you have any idea for us, if you want to share any improvement, like how we can improve our Apex platform, you are most welcome, and we would love to hear you. Just go to apex.oracle.com/go/ideas and post your recommendations over there. We'll love to hear from you all as well. And now, if you are doing any projects, if you are stuck anywhere, if you need our help, you can just go to Oracle Apex Express, www@oracle.com. You can just mail to us. And if you also want to be a part of our office hour session, or if you have any ideas regarding our office hour session, you are most welcome. Just reach out to us over this email ID. It will be posted in the chat, and we would love to hear you from as well. And now, if you have missed any of the office hours session, or if you want to replay any of the office hours session, you can do it. You can just watch it from the YouTube playlist, that is apex.oracle.com/go/playlist/jpack. This office hours session also will get uploaded very soon. And now we are here with the next office hour session, which is on building content apps with Web Center content and Apex. It's coming the next month. So go and register here, apex.oracle.com/go/jpack. You will get the link after that. With this, I would like to thank each one of you for your active participation and joining the JPEG office hour session. And we would love to see you in the next session as well. Please register. Have a good day ahead. Have a good weekend. See you all. Thank you.